Good morning, Grace Church. It is so good to be together. It's something I say every Sunday, but there's just a little extra to that today, right? What an interesting couple of weeks we've had with Helene and then with Milton. It's hard to believe that we were just here a week ago. It feels like a lifetime has passed since then. But gathering together today, I've been thinking about a hymn, old hymn from the 1700s that comes from our Methodist Wesleyan tradition. It was actually written by Charles Wesley in the 1700s. And in the early days of the Methodist movement, every time they would gather together for conferencing, they would sing this hymn called, "And Are We Yet Alive?" And it was meant to be sung looking around the room, because life in those early days of the movement was really hard, and you never knew from one gathering to the next who would be missing from the room. So when they sang this, it wasn't just a song, it was meant to serve a purpose. And it could be a really hard thing to sing, a sorrowful thing as you looked around the room and saw who wasn't there, but it could also be a hymn of praise when you saw what God brought you through. Today, it's a hymn of praise. And I'm just going to read the verses to you. I'm not going to sing it because it's really old and the melody's weird. But it should be up on the screen. First verse says this: "And are we yet alive and see each other's face? Glory and thanks to Jesus give for his almighty grace. Preserved by power divine to full salvation here, again in Jesus' praise we join and in his sight appear. What troubles have we seen? What mighty conflicts past? Fightings without and fears within, since we assembled last. Yet out of all the Lord hath brought us by his love, and still he doth his help afford, and hides our life above. Then let us make our boast of his redeeming power, which saves us to the uttermost till we can sin no more. Let us take up the cross till we the crown obtain, and gladly reckon all things lost, so we may Jesus gain." Does anyone here this morning have a boast to make in the mighty name of Jesus? Does anyone need to give glory and thanks to Jesus? Anyone been preserved by power divine? I recognize that as we gather today, there are a lot of different situations represented. Some of you were in shelter, some of you hunkered down outside, some of you had minimal to no damage, some of you have flooding, others lived literally through a tornado. If you are blessed to be in a position to lend a helping hand to others, we have an opportunity for you. You can sign up on the Grace Church app or on our website at egracechurch.com/Milton. That as help is needed for folks that are connected to our Grace Church family and in our community, and we need help, we'll plug people in to helping. There's also a place there to give an extra offering if you are able. There's also, if you need help, if you're somebody in that situation, let us know. Because as this church has done so many times before, all of our campuses are locking arms to love one another and our neighbors, and we're so grateful for what God has done. That our campus here did wonderful. The Cape campus did wonderful. We're praying this morning for our friends out at the Fort Myers Shores campus, where so many of their partners and people who attend out there have had flooding in their homes, and we're going to be doing everything we can to partner and help with that part of Grace Church. Now, I got checked on by a lot of people last week, and I did a lot of checking in myself, and in talking with people, there are not only different post-hurricane situations represented here today, but I know there are also a ton of different emotions represented. Now, I've heard from people that are relieved, people that are tired, overwhelmed, grateful, angry, happy, fragile, depressed, anxious, miserable, numb, you name it. And some of us are a combination of multiple feelings at one time. It's okay to feel two seemingly opposite things at once, joyful and sad, happy and exhausted. So let me ask you a question today that the people who are closest to me ask me all the time, and I regularly ask them. How is it with your soul today? Again, this comes from our Wesleyan heritage. This is the first question that they would ask in their small group meetings. What is your soul? Your soul is the real you. It's where all the key parts of your life come together to shape the core of who you are. It's what makes you uniquely you. Your soul is that deeper, often unseen spiritual side of you that lasts forever. It's made up of your thoughts, your emotions, and the deepest intentions and choices of your heart. It includes your body, your mind, your relationships, your true sense of identity. Everything that makes you, you. Pastor Dallas Willard once wrote this. He said that the soul is the unity and substance of your life. It's what makes you tick. And then Jesus said that the greatest commandment in all of the scriptures began this way. In Matthew 22:37, love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. In Greek, the word that Jesus uses for soul refers to what happens when God breathes life into a person. The word is where we get our English word psychology. So now that you have that background, let me ask you again, how is it with your soul today? Can you name what is going on inside of you? King David, who wrote many of the Psalms, once named what was going on inside of him. And he did that by taking a moment to ask God to help him know what was going on inside of him. In Psalm 139, David asked God, search me and know me. He needed God's help to understand where his soul was. And I think we need that too. Oh God, search me and know me. So before I go any further, I'm just going to pause for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And I want you to ask the Lord that in silence. Lord, search me and know me. Ask God to help you name the condition of your soul. Just take a moment to be still in God's presence. Let's be silent before the Lord together. When I attempt to answer that question, how is it with your soul, I have to admit that maybe like some of you, I'm just fried. I'm weary, I'm tired. I can tell you that my fuse is a lot shorter right now than it was a couple of weeks ago. Now, we're really blessed and fortunate that our home had no damage, and if it would have been just the two of us, Brittany and I would have ridden it out, but we left to go north because of our daughters. And as we drove north on Monday, what should have been a 6 or so hour drive turned into 14. And all along that route, gas stations were out of gas, and Papa Bear started to panic. I started to have anxious thoughts. We left our home just so my kids could sleep on the side of a highway. I cried tears of relief when we finally found a functional gas station and filled up. Driving back on Friday, we could see how much devastation our area was spared as we drove through Tampa and Sarasota. We stopped for a bathroom break not too far from home and found a gas station that was getting its pumps filled up at that moment. There were cars wrapped all the way around the building with their cans ready to fill up. Brittany talked to one woman who'd been waiting there since 4:30 in the morning. It was 8 o'clock at night. She couldn't go anywhere else because she needed the gas to be able to get to work in the morning, and her tank was empty. Our hearts were breaking for people that we met along the way. And I can tell you that after all of this, my soul needs renewal and restoration. So today we're stepping out of our series, Everyday Mission, to consider the hidden yet really vital health of our souls. Our souls matter so much that Jesus once asked the question, what does it profit a person to gain the whole world if they lose their soul? Nothing matters more than your soul. And after all we've been through, your pastors decided on Thursday to set aside this moment for us to stop and seek God's care together. And we'll jump back into our regular series next week. So experts tell us that after we have gone through multiple stressful events, God designed us with some amazing coping mechanisms to help us survive. When we face danger, our body kicks into what's often called fight or flight mode. And in these moments, our body chemistry shifts. Cortisol and adrenaline levels spike, and everything else gets put on hold. Our brains and our bodies zero in on staying alive and, if needed, helping others survive too. It's an incredible survival system that God built into us. God made us amazingly complex. It's no wonder that David, in that same psalm where he told God to search him and know him, also said, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So today, I want us to consider how to recover our soul's health after these storms, not just Helene and Milton. There are a lot of storms represented in this room that aren't related to the weather. And there are 2.5 verses of the best known psalm there is that I think can help us today. So here's our scripture for today. I want you to read this with me. Ready? Go. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Some English translations say it this way. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. This last week, really this last 2 weeks, I've been really concerned about my needs. Last Sunday, as soon as church was over, we were in full prep mode, running out to fill up our gas tanks and our gas cans in case we came home to no power. We needed to book a hotel room. I had to pack my blood pressure medication. I had to remove my fence gates. I needed to bring in my lanai furniture. I needed to get packed. After the gas fiasco, I went out and bought a spare gas can to make sure we didn't run out of gas on the way home. I could go on and on. I've needed a lot. Those needs consumed my thoughts. Now, this urge to stock up and get ready is good. As storms approach, those chemicals in our brain can help us focus and help us to survive. Here's the dilemma, though. God didn't design us to live this way constantly. If we stay in this heightened mode of panic, our bodies can actually get accustomed to living in a constant state of worry and fear, and what happens is not good. So we have to make the health of our souls a priority. If we neglect this, then one traumatic event can leave a lasting imprint on the rest of our lives. If we don't follow God's design for our lives, then long after the trauma ends, the effects of past trauma can invade our present life and relationships. Without taking time to recover, our body remembers. Praise God that Milton wasn't as bad as originally thought. But some of you were ambushed by all sorts of anxiety throughout the whole thing that wasn't totally about Milton. It was about Ian. It was about past storms. It was about storms in here, about past hurts and hang-ups and broken dreams. And today, if you've been traumatized by these storms physically or internally, or by something you've gone through of life's usual ups and downs, I've got good news. Jesus calls himself the shepherd that David prayed about 700 years earlier. Jesus said, I'm the good shepherd. He wants to lead you into such a close relationship with him that fear no longer controls you. Instead of just moving on or sucking it up or running from our feelings, whether by avoiding them or numbing them, we need to invite our shepherd Jesus to heal us. So what is Jesus, our shepherd's prescription for healing our souls after this storm and other storms we've been through in life? There's a few simple but counterintuitive ways that we can position our lives to let Jesus bring healing to our souls. And the first one's this: I need to stop and rest under my shepherd's protection. Remember in the Psalm, David says of the Lord, his shepherd, this: He makes me lie down. He makes me lie down. When God created you, when God created me, He built into us limits and a real need to stop and rest regularly. I've tried to ignore this so many times in my life, pushing through, toughing it out, but the truth is, that's just how God made us. If we don't stop and lie down, God will make us lie down. It's not because God is angry or pulling strings like some kind of puppet master. His command to rest isn't a threat. It's simply a fact of how we were created. From the moment God breathed life into you, He created you with a need to rest. We don't break that commandment. We end up breaking ourselves on that commandment if we ignore it. From the very beginning in Genesis, when God rested on the seventh day and gave the commandment to remember the Sabbath and set it apart, to the moments in Jesus' own ministry where we see Him take time to rest, we can't keep going at the relentless pace that many of you have been on lately. So there's this idea in the Hebrew language called Sabbath. And that word simply means to cease, to stop. So I want to give you permission and the encouragement. It's okay to stop. God created us with a need to step away from our busyness and rest. I don't know if anybody's ever been out to Wyoming and driven out there, but it's one of the best places in the world to drive because it's so remote that the speed limit signs don't even have numbers on them. They just say, proceed at a safe speed. There's another big difference of driving in Wyoming. It's so remote that you have to watch your gas gauge, maybe more than what we did with the storm, because some of the roads go on and on forever that it'd be really easy to run out of gas. So one gas station in Wyoming is the last place to get a tank of gas for over 100 miles, and the wise owner of that gas station put a big sign out front of his station that says this: "This is the stop that keeps you going." And that's what we mean when we talk about Sabbath. Resting, ceasing, stopping, those moments of rest, that's the stop that keeps you going. If we don't stop now and then, our soul will run out of fuel. A rested soul keeps rolling on life's highway. And it's this beautiful thing. So many of us try to do and impress God, to impress other people, to prove something to ourselves. The beauty of rest and Sabbath is we intentionally accomplish nothing, and God still loves us. In Psalm 23, David paints a picture of sheep that have traveled a long way and need rest. And sheep are a lot like puppies. They don't like to settle down, but they do need a lot of sleep. And think about the image that David's using here. While the sheep are resting, the shepherd's guarding them. In David's time, shepherds would often gather their sheep into a makeshift pen with rocks forming a circle, just leaving one opening. And once all of the sheep were inside, the shepherd would lie down across that opening, literally becoming the gate to protect them as they slept. Shepherds would regularly put their lives on the line to keep their sheep safe. Jesus later would pick up this same image and say that He is the gate. Just like those shepherds who protect their animals, right after He calls Himself the Good Shepherd, He says this: I lay down my life for the sheep. Some of you are so busy that you've forgotten how to breathe, how to take a break. And for people, you're killing yourself for people that Jesus already died for. What's the point in you killing yourself? Friends, the world will keep going while you rest. The Lord will protect your loved ones, your business, your neighborhoods, your families, your responsibilities. The truth is that Jesus loves our loved ones even more perfectly than we do, and while we rest, He's got this. So I want to challenge you this week to take a break from busyness, from anything stressful. If you're in too deep, start with just a few minutes a day. Start with 30 minutes a day. Arrange your life so that at some point you can end up taking a whole day just like God did in creation. I can promise you that God was not tired. He was setting an example for us. Let's look at the second thing we can do to position our lives for our soul's recovery. 2, ask my shepherd to guide me to refreshment. Here's the next phrase of David's prayer. The shepherd makes him lie down, and where does he make him lie down? In green pastures, he leads me beside still waters. These are places where sheep can replenish their body, where they can refresh their strength. Sheep need green grass. They're so skittish and nervous that they need still waters to drink from. I want to remind all of us today that we're a lot like sheep, and that we need regular stops not only to rest, but to be refreshed. Like sheep, we humans all have some basic things in common. We need sleep. We need healthy food. We need plenty of water to drink. We need time to be with others who bring joy into our lives. We're created to laugh, to have fun, to enjoy the blessings that are all around us. I know this sounds basic, but the basics are what each one of us need to refresh our souls, especially when we're stressed out. In the Gospel of John, there's this rich, deep story about Jesus traveling through a region called Samaria. And Samaritans were a group that were despised by the Jewish people. And Jesus ends up having a conversation with a woman at a well. And the story is so important to this unveiling of Jesus' identity as the Messiah that we need to focus on what happens when Jesus first enters the town. John chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, what was he? Tired from the long walk. He sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at that time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. We get a full picture of Jesus' needs after a really intense time. The storm he was facing was growing opposition from the religious leaders of his day. It grew so intense that Jesus went to this territory that most Jews walked out of their way to go around. Jesus goes into the heart of it just to catch a break. He's tired, not just because of the walk. He sat down wearily. The growing controversy and the stress over his message was wearing him down. He needs water, so he asks for a drink. He's hungry, so he sends the disciples into town to buy some lunch. Let me say this. If Jesus, the Lord and Master of the universe, needed to take time for refreshment, if he needed to rest, if he needed food, if he needed water, then you do too. Paying attention to this idea of self-care and asking for God's guidance to practice it is good for our body, our mind, and our soul. And we need to surround ourselves with people that can make sure that we're doing these basic things for ourselves. So recently I felt like a superhero, right? I went for my yearly checkup, and they did all the lab work, and it came back and it was all perfect. Every last bit of it. Sugar, perfect. Cholesterol, perfect. People were surprised at that one. The good look hormone, it was perfect too. I made that last one up. My cape got caught just a little bit, though, when the doctor told me it was the second visit in a row that my blood pressure was high and he was going to start me on a medication for it. I am absolutely determined to get healthy enough to be off of that blood pressure medication by the next time I go. But listen, to do that, There's some basic things that I needed to do every day, and I need to be held accountable to that. So one of my friends checks in on me every Friday and asks me about the list of things that I'm doing. If I were to do these things even just most of the time, I would drop enough weight to be into the normal range naturally. Here's what he's holding me accountable to: 125 ounces of water every day. I hate water. 30 minutes of movement daily, even just a walk. Weekday fasting between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. No cheat meals except for on the weekend. That's it. Nothing heroic. No walking on water. No superhero stuff. I can take the cape off. It's simple stuff. So I want you to make a decision to do one thing each day to care for yourself the way God cares about you. It may be really simple. Eat a regular meal. Take a walk. Laugh. Call a friend. I think when Jesus began a sermon by saying, "Consider the lilies of the field," it's because he had just noticed them and was admiring them himself. Here's the last way we can position our lives: look to my shepherd to restore my soul. The last phrase that David mentions that can help us position our lives is the first half of verse 3. He restores my soul. Just like the sheep look to their shepherd for guidance and restoration, David says he's placed his total trust in the Lord as his shepherd. If you're anything like me, when trauma hits, my first instinct is to run from it, to downplay it, to deny it, to ignore it, to bury it, to medicate it, even get angry at it. Our feelings can be a really hard thing to face, especially when we're vulnerable enough to spend time with Jesus. But it's in that quiet, trusting space that we can find real healing. One of the first authors that I ever loved as a follower of Jesus was a guy named Mike Yaconelli, who's gone to be with the Lord now. And he wrote this: "Until a few months ago, I had no idea I'd lost my soul. In the busyness and clatter of my life as I traveled all over the world serving God, I thought my soul was just fine, but it wasn't. I spent hours every day doing God's work, but 1 second doing soul work. I was consumed by the external and oblivious to the internal. In the darkness of my soul, I was stumbling around, bumping into the symptoms of my soullessness. I was busy, superficial, friendless, afraid, cynical, but I didn't even know where all these negative parts of my life were coming from. Then I began to learn there's a difference between believing in Jesus and being with Jesus, talking to Jesus and letting Jesus talk to me, acquainted with God out there, but a stranger to God in here. Slowly, my soul was reawakened by a loving Father calling me by name. I found my soul again." Jesus wants to restore your soul. He wants to help you to rediscover your soul. And for our soul to be truly healthy, we have to turn away from quick fixes and temporary escapes. And if we're not spending time with our good shepherd, he can't heal us. Remember what Mike said: this isn't just about believing in Jesus, it's about being with Jesus. Even during Jesus' own ministry, he often stepped away from the crowds to spend time with his Father. And if he needed that time alone, how much more do we need it? Look at Luke 5 with me as Jesus' disciples ignore his request to keep quiet about him for a little bit. It says, despite Jesus' instructions, the report of his power spread even faster, and vast crowds came to hear him preach and to be healed of their diseases. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. These demands are outside of his control. Despite his instructions, the report of his power is spreading. Sometimes there are situations and circumstances that are beyond our control. They were for Jesus, they can be for us. And the Greek word for wilderness is the word eremos, and it just means quiet place, solitary place, lonely place. So instead of trying to do the impossible within the limits of a human body, Jesus leads his own life well. I think since he was human like us, his soul needed what our soul needs: to spend time with the one who loves us most and loves us best, the one who knows us fully yet will not stop loving us. Can you identify a time each day this week to just be with Jesus? Maybe it's just 3 or 4 minutes. It might be in a car line. It might be after a class. It might be during kids' nap time. It might be while you're sitting on the side of the road. You're a human being, not a human doer. Take time to just be in the presence of the Lord. You don't have to do anything. just be with Jesus. And that's enough. My maternal grandfather, I call him Pawpaw, he's nearing the end of his journey on earth. His cancer spread through every part of his body, and he won't be with us much longer. My parents separated a lot when I was a kid, and even when they were together, things were chaos. So Granny and Pawpaw's house was our sanctuary. Most of the good things about me, I learned from Pawpaw. He's been more of a father to me than a grandpa at all. And a few weeks ago, I got to go visit him for probably what was the last time on this earth, and I thought about what I was going to say when I was with him. And then I realized that even though I'd learned a lot from him and the way that he tells stories and imparts wisdom, some of the best times I ever had with him were in silence. Early morning fishing, walking through the woods squirrel hunting, patching fence. I didn't really like that one, but it was good to be together. Sitting out by a fire. We didn't need to say anything, just being together was enough. So when I got to his house that evening, I told him hi, and then I just sat down. And for the longest time, we didn't say anything to each other. And it was so healing. It was holy. My fears about living in a world where he wasn't there for me were quieted just by being in his presence. In the same way, Pete Scazzaro says that God's first language is silence. When we quiet our lives and are just with him, Jesus can restore our soul. So I'm going to invite the band to come back forward, and as we close this time, I want to invite you to experience the rest that the Good Shepherd offers. Life is full of storms. Some of them come from the outside with the weather like hurricanes. Some of them happen in here, the struggles and the burdens that we carry. But the Good Shepherd, Jesus, invites us to lay down our burdens and find true rest in him. Instead of striving, instead of running, instead of ignoring the state of your soul, Jesus offers healing and restoration and peace. He's inviting you to lie down in green pastures, to be refreshed by still waters, to let him restore your weary soul. Right now, he's offering you rest, not just a break, but deep soul-restoring peace. So during this song, as we sing kind of what's become the Grace Church Central anthem, Trust in God, I want to encourage you to come and pray and bring your whole self. Bring your fears, your pain, your hopes, your heart to the Good Shepherd. Let him guide you to the rest your soul has been craving. Open your heart to him and let him lead you into that healing and rest. And if nothing else, after all that we've been through over the last couple of weeks, and not to mention any of the other storms going on in the inside, just take a moment in his presence to and trust in him. Let's stand together and sing.